And our first guest tonight, because we're going to feature a couple of people that are going to appear throughout the Modern Knowledge Tour. We'll talk a little more about that later. But is somebody that I think a lot of people found through these, new platforms that we're talking about. And, a guy that's, essentially based in Ireland, who, let's say 20 years ago, you'd either have to go there or catch him at a tour. You've been able to go to YouTube and his site and be able to listen to the many DVDs and specials he's put on. One of the true pioneers in terms of esoteric knowledge research, but really one of the people who have, I think, been at the forefront of illuminating a lot of new people that have come to this. It's great that you're going to be able to bring him to Canada and make him part of the tour, but we're lucky enough because of this new technology to be able to bring Michael to us tonight via Skype. Michael Tsarion, how are you?
Hello, Richard. It's nice to be on your show, and thanks for that great introduction to what we're doing.
Yeah, and we're here with Chris and Dave Whitehead, and obviously you're familiar with those guys, but talk to us a little bit about what we just were talking about there, Michael, the evolution, because, not everybody's been around as long as you have, and I'm not trying to age you here, but in terms of really being a person who had the boots on the ground, who was a trailblazer pre-internet. And then now all of a sudden the absolute explosion of people sort of waking up and finding information in this time. How has that been to sort of, sit back and observe?
Well, I've been actively involved in it because there's not a single message of mine, that could have got out without it, because it's impossible to imagine for a moment I wasn't even alternative. Say I was doing something even almost mainstream, to try and peddle your own book, to try and wave your own, blow your own trumpet. Even that people find very difficult in the mainstream. The platforms weren't there for anyone who's even doing any kind of maverick work, even if it's sort of even semi, orthodox. So to be doing it so far to, the fringes, you couldn't have got anywhere. You would have been either frustrated or it just simply wouldn't have been feasible, without the growth of the social media. And that's how my first book sold, so that then I was able to move on to the next thing and the next. So, you create the first initial product, say like a book, and that's your launch pad, and then mostly you'll, like a lemming, just fall off the edge of the world. But because of the social media, a person literally sitting in Seattle, where I'm based, was able to then reach out to people all over. Or actually, really, in my case, it was more them reaching to me. I've never been that active in reaching out to people for various reasons, because I do think you kind of hinted at this in the early part of what you were saying, that this is a kind of I think of it as a very spiritual type of journey as well. It's not just about information for the head. It's not just an intellectual, egoic process. It's a very deep process when you get into this field, when you're really into it. So for me, I wasn't reaching out so much, but again, that's a moot point, because the whole idea was that then the world, you have the world as your platform. And I saw then that there was such an incredible response that then moved me forward into areas that I never would have thought of before, like doing more DVDs. Then, the YouTube generation. I was one of the first people to put up, videos. And in fact, I was one of the very first people to even use PowerPoint in my presentations, which is, computer-based, and then you at least try to get more sophisticated, and then those PowerPoints were then able to be put up as what we now know to be, vlogs and videos and even full-blown documentary films. But I didn't sit and plan any of that. It was the medium itself and the response from other people that it was basically clamoring for more, and they wanted more of quality. So then you're pushed to improve the quality of what you're doing, and also the depth of insight of what you're doing. You can't just remain on the basic, level of the beginner. You've got, as Chris was saying there, to slightly move forward, bring more to people, dig deeper yourself in your own personal life for this information, so that there's a sort of a graduation and a matriculation, as opposed to just reciting the same old stuff without a single original idea, which is a lot of what people are doing. So it's always important to keep close to your mentors, study hard what they're saying, try to weed out some of the, I wouldn't say disinformation, that's a bad word, but just maybe a little bit of stuff that's not quite thought out. My work very much deals with that, and trying to perfect the rough edges of other people's work and the X factors of other people's work, and push the psychology, philosophy themes as well a little bit for people, so they, you're not talking down to them. People have come out of ordinary colleges and even sometimes universities, so I don't talk down to people. I think they're quite capable of grasping this. I think the desire is there. And I also never forget also that we're in the youngest days of this. The conspiracy movement, or even looking at life in general in this way, is a very, very young way of looking at the world. So a lot of mistakes will be made. People will rush too fast. They'll be hurry. They'll have anticipation, and they'll be a little bit, like wild horses. So of course there'll be a lot of crazy wacko-jacko theories and wacko-jacko teachers. But that's only because these are the early days of the human race to have a perspective into the greater power pyramid of how this whole geopolitical system, and even the sort of mind control-based system, in other words, the control of consciousness and the control of politics, how this all works. So we're in very, very early stages, and since I know that, then I tend to go slowly, with patience, not rush, and try to have a much more mature outlook towards this thing. And also then at the same time, not get pessimistic when I see that, things aren't moving as fast as, say, a lot of people who email me would like it to be going, because again, to talk to people in the world, in the wider world, about this subject, you're dealing with people who are coming to it for the very first time. It's an idea that has barely been in the world. You can talk back even only a couple of generations with your J.R. Griffins and Eustace Mullins and Gary Allen and, Myron Fagan. I mean, it's not very long back you're going. You're talking only 50 years or so when the giants in this subject launched it. So it's extremely young, and therefore to get impatient about where we're going and get all bleak about it, is really not the way to go. We're looking into new frontiers, and we have barely had takeoff, if you really want to look at it in a chronological sense. We've only had barely takeoff. The seatbelts are still on, so, the stewardesses aren't out of their seats yet to bring us the drinks, So be patient and be loving with the information. Have tremendous patience with oneself. This is my message to people who are new to this, or even some seasoned beginners who are getting very jaded. It's a wonderful, wonderful time, like you said in your introduction. We're in a special time, and I just wanted to highlight that. We're in a special time. It's a time that none of our forefathers ever enjoyed. Maybe one or two individuals in millions in the past ever had the insights that we're capable of having, and the social media, by all means, is an extremely crucial, essential part of that understanding.
Well, and one of the things that comes up a lot, let's say in the sort of esoteric knowledge, is the as above, so below, and I find that can be interpreted in a lot of different ways, and that can even be applied to the Gandhi, the Gandhi statement of be the change, right? Be the change you want to see in the world. Because I think, to your point, this is, like you said, it's the nascent times for this absolutely crazy overload of information, of insight into things we never thought we'd see behind the curtain. And of course that creates all sorts of crazy emotional responses that we're, quite frankly, as a species, not prepared. We're not emotionally intelligent to handle such incredible knowledge, and again, sort of, a perspective to see who's really at the top of the pyramid. And I suspect as we go forward, there'll almost be a handbook as to how you sort of go through this. And before you even get introduced to any of the knowledge about the big picture, you're going to have to essentially show that you've done the work, as you said, on yourself, and gotten to that level and understood that it's ultimately about you first, not in a selfish way, but because you can't really fully absorb or digest or process the bigger picture information before you're vibrating at a different frequency.
I've seen that. When you asked about my earlier, what I've seen, and when I sat back and saw, that's what I saw. One eye was on the medium, and of course my own productions, you have to be focused on that like an artisan. But my other eye was horrified by the fact that I saw people actually go mad. I don't talk a lot about my personal life, but I've seen colleagues, friends into this go boogaloo, go completely, almost like you could scroll back to the 60s, in which in those days it would have been taken, say, LSD or something like that, that kind of danger. Well, in a way, you are taking a kind of a drug. It's the drug of awakening. It's that famous Matrix pill. And they don't have that manual. So the last chapters of my Atlantis book were so deeply motivated by that, to give that kind of handbook. Here's how the thing can be framed. Here's one way it can be framed, a very important way. My last book, Disciples of the Mysterium, was a whole book, 400 pages, to try and bring that, as you say, manual to people so they get to grips with this, because you're quite right. It is Socratic, it is alchemical, it is hermetic. Thomas Vaughan, the great alchemist, said that earthly things are in heaven and heavenly things are in earth. The earth must be perceived in a heavenly way, and when you get to heaven, you'll be finding that everything that you knew back in your incarnated days, those things are there present, but now they're raised to a different level, because you have raised yourself to a different level. You're absolutely right. I totally believe that to be true.
And there's a lot of chicken in the egg, and we'll talk about that on the other side of the break. Knowledge is power. That is today's show on What in the World. We're with Chris Rusak, Dave Whitehead. We got Michael Tsarion on the line, and we got Carmen Bolter joining us later in the show. We're going to take a break. It is Sirius XM, Channel 167, Canada Talks.